Gressling,
Yes.
Hoffman,
Yes.
Agnekoff,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Bosher,
Yes.
Lynn.
Yes.
And next new business is the master plan discussion. We've included in our tables tonight, there was an implementation work plans, chapter 7 from the master plan. I think there are some of these, work items are assigned to the planning commission. And Joanna, you had requested, although it did need to be done, but you had requested it be added to the township. What are your thoughts? I'll let you
So,
start.
thank you. So first of all, we approved the master plan, and frankly, I'm really excited that this is on for discussion, at least with my fellow commissioners. I think this is our time to shine, to really, it's not just approving something and just putting it on the shelf. We had key areas that are on here. I know I see some red items on, the handout for this evening, but even with that, what I'd like to see is, especially the items that are in high priority, start there and maybe have them as discussion items as we move through 2024. And if need be, bring folks into, unless you want to have work sessions, a special work session, but to really start tackling some of the items that we've all approved as a planning commission, for areas where we're noted as a responsible party, and start attacking these items and having conversation, even learning opportunities. In the bylaws, we're supposed to have training, 4 trainings, I think, a year, but, maybe there's training that's available in all of these. But the bottom line is, this is our time to potentially shine, really come back with that transparency for the public and really deal with some of the issues that we have all agreed upon are items that we should be looking at. So, it's really up to the commission and you as chair to decide how we do that, whether we tackle them, as part of our regular agenda items, or whether we have work sessions, but I'd like to see an action plan, to start addressing this.
So that's great. They're kind of, obviously they're broken into chapters, so, one of the ways we could do it would be to, bring a section before the board at a meeting, put it on the agenda one section at a time and go through it. And obviously, a lot of the responsible parties, staff, consultants, township board, and the planning commission, so, but we could have our staff bring us, proposed changes potentially, that kind of thing is an open way to do it. Have a consultant, make suggestions.
Yeah, and I know like MSC Extension or MTA has folks too that can talk to some of these. Sometimes it's just even understanding respectfully, we did approve this,
Right.
is what do all of these mean really?
Right. I know some of these are, and I look at, as I'm just skimming through these, the housing and neighborhood, some of those, were discussed, briefly regarding lot sizes in different areas that, some of the, older residential areas are all non-conforming based on the new requirements, so, those are the type of things also that we need to look at.
But, and again, some of the stuff, and I put comments in there, because I wanted you to understand that these were planning commission things, but some of these involve, they're gonna have to get board approval for us to spend the money on.
Right.
So what I'm gonna suggest is that if we can look at a possible seminar through MTA or the Michigan Planning Association that discusses master plan,
Mm-hmm.
that we go and we sit down and we listen to what they're doing, and maybe before we even go in there, give them goals and say, hey, we have these goals here, but what kind of complex in one regard on how we reach those particular goals. There's certain things that we're doing right, that I'm trying to do right now. It's like going through the zoning maps completely, section by section. I do now have section maps of the township. And that will be going through every file in the filing cabinet to verify all the zoning so that we don't have Scrivener errors like what happened on the G Drive property. And when that gets completed, that will eventually go to the ZBA, and the ZBA will look at that, if there's any errors in there, and then they will approve it, and then the zoning map will be approved, according to our files. So there are other things in there that can be easily done. One of them in there talks about a code compliance procedure. I already have a code compliance procedure. If you'd like to read that procedure, I'd be happy to send it to the planning commission. And that would be easily maybe marking one of those things off. But I think a lot of those things in there, when we talk about housing, how do we get to that? Okay, whether anybody wants to like it or dislike it, we're gonna see housing in the township. There's gonna be additional housing in here. We're already feeling the pressure of people that are coming in and they want to build multi-family housing. And so that means that we're gonna experience more pressure from properties that butt up with the city of Marshall to have them properties go to 425 because they have to have utilities. You're not gonna build a multi-family complex with 10 or 12 units in it and not be able to have some type of city services. You can't sustain it any other way. So there are pressures that are gonna take place. There is gonna be a greater demand for single-family dwelling. We're seeing the single-family dwelling, and I can tell you from the time I came in here, out on 16 Mile Road, out on the property, I believe it's Sunset Drive out there, almost every one of those lots are sold now. And if you look at 16 Mile Road, down the street, there's land for sale down there. And if those people sell that land, their intent is to put housing in there. So we're gonna see that housing. So that's one of the things that's in the master plan, and it's expected growth that's gonna take place in the township. So I don't know how much farther, and I'll throw it back over because I've talked too much, so.
Go ahead.
So, thank you for all of that, Paul, because that just further substantiates why we need to have a proactive approach to reviewing these items and to have a systematic way of doing that so that we don't let our sense of urgency again overcome our sense of quality and address how we're gonna look at these. So I am just gonna be an advocate to say, and thank you, Commissioner Agnew, for putting this on the agenda of let's at least look at each one of these, understanding what Paul just mentioned, and that there are resources, but to really understand and articulate what do we want to do and how we tackle each one of these. Again, doesn't mean we can't still do the planning and the master plan and all of those things in terms of MSU Extension, Michigan State University Extension, or Michigan Township Association, MTA, but I still think we know our community, and I want to understand what we mean by each one of these and what we need to effectively address them. Do you want a motion? Do you want to discuss?
I think it's just a discussion.
Yeah.
There's nothing to put, we're just having a discussion right now.
So what's the thought of planning commission? Do we want to have a work session? Do we want to just put each one of these on an agenda as we move through especially the high priority ones through 2024? What is the?
I guess, from my point of view, I'd like to be able to work on them at our regular meetings. However, if it is involved bringing in a consultant or attending, we'll work. We may have to schedule a special work session, for that purpose. Depend on the availability of the consultant. So I think it's probably gonna be both of those. I imagine at some point we'll have to have.
Is there something particular that the commission would like to address first? put it that way, because we have several items
Yeah.
in there.
And they're all
and I-
kinda unique, I mean,
And they're prioritized, but again, that really what has to happen is the planning commission has to say, we wanna address this particular issue. This is the issue that we see that we need to look at. And then we can go forward with there, and I can get hold of the Michigan Township Association and find out if there's anything pertaining to that particular topic, and see if we can move that forward at, possibly a future meeting.
So I mean, looking at the high priority, you know, the chapter two, the natural resources, rural character and recreation, I think that's a big one, right? But that would be, you know, I think a consultant would need to be brought in to discuss that.
Which one?
Those first two, chapter two, the two in chapter of high priority, in terms of the short term.
I mean, technically,
Since we prioritize these things, a lot have changed.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
I mean, how
understand that,
prioritize,
but what I was gonna say is that we do have somebody in the county that does parks and recreation that's full-time for the county. I mean, the taxpayers in the whole county have voted for a recreational tax. So, we could ask Doug Farrell to come in and talk about it, and say, okay, as a township, we're trying to address this in our master plan. What do you perceive is our next step moving forward with the township, and knowing what's going on in the community, what's going on with our bordering townships and everything? Is there some kind of, you know, one of the things that I've seen in a lot of surveys, people are really looking for, and I'll use this term, I don't like to use it, but a linear path, or a place where people can, you know, walk, or they can ride a bicycle, they can do non-motorized traffic, okay? What's the plans for the county? We have the North Trail that runs, the bicycle trail, but that runs through the, Bridge Park and in that particular area. So that might be something that we could tie with Doug Farrell and say, okay, what as a township can we do? Then we could go back to the township board and suggest to them with some of the allocated funds that we receive, that that's something that we move forward to, and that makes complete sense.
Oh, I thought you had something.
Sorry. You had asked initially what should the priorities be, and again, the discussion of them might offer what our next step should be. Like, it could be consulting, it could be training, certainly some of them might return to the township board for funding, I don't know, I mean, you have to understand it. You asked what was priority, and for me personally, I would say it is, probably chapter two, items 1 and 2, as well as the, again, they're all high priorities.
Yeah.
It's,
I mean, they all have their own.
yeah, they all have their own unique,
I agree with you. I think the chapter two are two important ones, and then I think housing, just because we know there's, you know, that's something that's gonna keep happening. I think when this was first being, you know, prioritized, you know, the full scope of that wasn't realized, so.
and that's where sometimes, I mean, it's, I waffle between housing and neighborhoods to just, you know, land use and some of those conversations, because I think that kind of feeds back into housing, but,
Right.
and those were high priorities, so. So is there consensus at least to at least put one of them in for discussion and then review those chapters and see what we want to do? Or?
That's what I'm recommending is, as we move into the 2024, calendar, we'll start
And
to
then
move
we
these in.
consolidate them down so we can break them down into smaller pieces.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
easier to look
You
at
know,
it that way.
bundle them together, the chapter two, I think would be appropriate to start at a high priority. And I think that would be, I mean, chapter five, those are all, we're not on those, those aren't part of our, yeah. The land use,
And the land use, they're all for the planning commission before them, and they're all high, same way as chapter 2, priorities high on both those, and
So it might make
both of
sense
those for the
to
planning.
tackle chapter 6 first, because like Jenny said, there, you know, those kind of have implications within all the others, you know. Like, you know, Paul's notes, he's in the process of, they're in the process of updating design. I mean, that's on our list. Really, that's his responsibility as staff to bring that to you. But once it's done,
Well, maybe it's even,
then,
maybe it's even a matter of also creating timelines that we can introduce to some new accomplish.
yeah. Well, I think, you know, from what I'm hearing is we just wanna get these on the agenda so we force ourselves to work on them. So I think that's what we'll do. All right. Anyone else have any comments on the implementation of the plan? Any other discussion? Right. I think that'll,
Well, there's nothing wrong with having it on the agenda, there's nothing wrong with us also saying we're gonna postpone action till another, to another meeting, because we do have a full agenda. But if, I just personally learned that having it on the agenda forces the conversation.
absolutely, I agree.
So, you're looking at, chapter 6, land use,
I think
put
that's
on the
a
agenda,
logical start.
the agenda for, January,
Yeah.
okay?
So that was chapter 2?
Chapter 6, land use.
Before one of those, yeah, all four of those are ours, yeah. Chapter 6, land use, items 10 through 13.
I think we can all do our homework and maybe refresh our memory of
Mhm.
what's in chapter 6.
Absolutely.
So that we can come hopefully for January 2nd.
All right, we're up to the second public comment period. Persons addressing the commission are required to give their name and address for the record when called upon by the chair. Members of the public shall